Did Ghislaine Maxwell, the co-conspirator, child sex trafficker, who's good friends with Donald Trump, did she just get transferred to a brand new celebrity, low security prison in Texas so she can hang out with other celebrities, who committed fraud and that kind of thing, like Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos and one of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City? Did she just get transferred as a reward for telling Donald Trump what he wanted to hear in the Epstein matter, that he's not involved and they'll be able to use that to pardon her? We point out all the developments the last 48 hours. Congress agreeing to postpone her deposition until after the Supreme Court rules a year from now. Her getting transferred to a fancy club-fed prison. Obviously, quid pro quo. And some reporting that at least her family, did a warning shot to Donald Trump by releasing that birthday card album that he sent to Epstein to the Wall Street Journal in order to get Donald Trump to play ball, meaning to give her a pardon. We cover it all on Legal AF, the podcast. Here's a clip.
Let's talk about a few developments in Trump's cover-up of his connections with Epstein. Obviously, earlier in the week, he made the statement that he was aware that Epstein was taking his help underage girls who were working in the spa, which Donald Trump says is the best spa in America. That happened around 2000, the Virginia Giuffre sex trafficking. And then Donald Trump said, Epstein stole her from me. He stole her. You mean he sex trafficked her from Mar-a-Lago? And we've been talking about that for a long time. You have Giuffre's family. They've been very outspoken, obviously, about what Donald Trump has said and calling Giuffre since died by suicide, but treating Giuffre like she's property, and also treating Ghislaine Maxwell as like the hero in the story. What we're seeing, Popak, is after Donald Trump's gone further down into looking like he's incriminating himself, which we always knew these connections. But I mean, you were aware in 2000 of the sex trafficking happening in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's a stunning thing he didn't say sex trafficking, but he said he stole her. And we knew what happened to her. And Trump said, you all know what happened to her. So he seems to be acknowledging that he was kind of aware what was happening. I've done so many videos on the Trump-Epstein connection, but now you have all of that Trump MAGA media trying to basically do the January 6th. But that Ghislaine Maxwell's the hero, and she and Trump are working to stop the bad guys, and that the victims, like Virginia Giuffre, they're the real bad guys, and they're the ones not telling the truth. So you've got shows like Greg Kelly and others, like they bring on Ghislaine Maxwell's brother. Like they're doing a full-fledged propaganda to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell because that's what Donald Trump wants to be done. Because, she knows all about Donald Trump. She knew Trump in the late 80s. She was Epstein's girlfriend. Then she linked Epstein with Trump, and she knew all about what Trump was doing. There's an article from the Sunday Mirror in 1997, how Madame Maxwell would bring the young girls to Donald Trump, or the young ladies would be bringing to Donald Trump. So anyway, here's what Greg Kelly did. Here's Ian Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's brother. This is what's happening on right-wing media as they know how to brainwash their audience. Now they say the victims are liars. Here, play this clip.
Yesterday, what would you like to say in response, and what should people know about Virginia, the late Virginia Giuffre?
Look, the simple position is that it is Virginia Giuffre who has lied about her role and has lied about my sister's role.
And then Greg Kelly, the Trump propagandist, starts saying Ghislaine Maxwell is innocent and she should be let free. Again, this is just like the election lies they told. They go all in on the big lie. Here, play this clip.
That's why I'm not taking anything without skepticism from anybody, especially the media, especially the government, especially the Department of Justice. And I don't care, quite frankly, who it's about, including Ghislaine Maxwell and, to a lesser extent, Jeffrey Epstein. All right. I say lesser extent. Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to the sex stuff in 2008. All right. He's a dirtbag monster. Does that mean Ghislaine Maxwell is? I don't think so, folks. That's not the way our society works, not the way it's supposed to work at all. There is so much exculpatory evidence here that nobody understands, that it looks like the government kept from the defense, which is illegal, juror misconduct, you name it. And look at what happened in that court, right? Prosecutor pointing the finger. All right, just remember this image for a moment, all right? Ghislaine Maxwell's on the left. It's COVID, right? So hardly anybody's there. And the attorney, the government attorney, doesn't have to wear a mask, pointing her finger right there at Maxwell.
What are you even talking about? By the way, I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell had a fair trial. She was convicted of sex trafficking. Multiple victims testified that they were not just sexually assaulted by Epstein, but that Ghislaine was involved in it also, not just bringing them to Epstein. The court found that Ghislaine Maxwell is a massive liar. Now Donald Trump has fired that prosecutor, Maureen Comey, who's the daughter of James Comey. Trump claims that James Comey created an Epstein hoax, which now he has the right-wing media parroting. So I think regardless, Ghislaine Maxwell is likely going to get a retrial, regardless of what happens before the Supreme Court, who she's currently petitioning, because the president of the United States said, I looked at the files, and the files show that this was a hoax and that this was tampered with by the FBI and the lead prosecutor's death. Think about it. The president of the United States, granted it's a convicted felon himself, but he's saying that the father of the main prosecutor tampered with the files. And so Ghislaine's going to say whether that's true or not, well, we should have been entitled to that information. And there should be a presumption that the executive branch is telling the truth about things like that. So at the very least, I should get a retrial. So we all know by now from our last reports that she got immunity from Trump's former criminal defense attorney, the number 2 at the DOJ. She spoke for 10 hours with them, and then she imposed conditions on her deposition with Congress. Remember how the Democrats were able to make that really smart maneuver to get her deposition and force the Republicans' hands, and the Republicans were too afraid not to vote on it, but then they recessed Congress to figure out how they were going to plan this. Well, we see the plan taking place. Even MAGA Mike Johnson was like, we need to give Donald Trump the space to figure this out. Well, Trump's implemented his plan, right? He sent his former criminal defense lawyer, the number 2 at the DOJ, to give Ghislaine immunity. They've now moved Ghislaine from her prison in Tallahassee to a minimum security facility, like with no guards. It's basically like a resort in Southeast Texas, Prison Camp Bryan, it's called. They gave her an exemption because the conviction for sex trafficking does not allow her to be in this minimum security facility. So they move her there. They get what they want from her. She basically then gives conditions to testify before Congress. And her conditions are, you have to give me immunity. I get to dictate where the location is. I won't sit for a deposition until after the Supreme Court's here's my petition for a new trial or to throw out the charges based on the non-prosecution agreement. And then there was another, I get the questions in advance. I want you to list all of the questions for me. Well, MAGA Republicans in Congress didn't agree to the immunity portion, but they didn't have to because the DOJ has already given her the immunity. And now they've moved Ghislaine's deposition to after September 29th. There's no date for it right now. So they took that subpoena, they continued it, meaning they moved it to some indefinite time in the future. So Ghislaine can first hear what the Supreme Court has to say, and the Supreme Court will make a ruling there. Then she's going to argue that her habeas petition has to be heard. That's her new trial petition to the district court based on all this new information she's going to get. But now she's rewarded, right, Popak? She's now in this facility that she loves to be at. She's been rewarded right now for what's she being rewarded for right now, other than covering up for Donald Trump? This is sickening and disturbing. Oh, and we also learned this week, I mentioned at the top of the show, that Donald Trump has ordered the DOJ and FBI to redact his name from all of the files. So you know how they had like 1,000 FBI and DOJ agents? What they were actually doing was redacting and removing the files. removing Trump's name from the files. It's sick. As I said, not a red or blue issue. To me, this is a good versus evil issue. This is sickening, but it is true. You know, for Trump's supporters, a lot of them, you could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. You can cover up for the pedo ring. You could be involved with Epstein. And they don't, you know, I mean, yes, this is an issue that animates them a little bit, but there's really nothing for that 30% of this country that this guy, you know, can't do. He's rewarding a convicted sex trafficker in plain view to cover up for him. It's as obvious as can be. And then there are still people like, well, maybe she's the hero. She's the hero? What are you talking about? She's the sex trafficker. She had a trial. She's convicted. Popa.
Well, let's talk about people that have never been in a courtroom making comments about what happens in a courtroom. I've never been in a courtroom where I've been on the defense side where the prosecutor didn't at some point, or in a civil case where one party didn't point to the other party during the case. I don't know what that means. Doesn't mean a darn thing. But Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't believe there was anything untoward about her trial. Because how do I know that? Because she filed a brief with the United States Supreme Court. And she didn't say she wasn't guilty. She said she has immunity. That's different. She didn't say that there was anything untoward. All that stuff that one talking head for Newsmax, whatever it is, none of that's in her brief because none of it's true. She doesn't argue that she didn't get a fair trial. She didn't argue that there was evidence that was let in that shouldn't have. She didn't argue that there was evidence that should have been let in that wasn't. She didn't argue that there was prosecutorial misconduct. She didn't argue that there was jury misconduct. She didn't argue that the judge didn't like her or the judge was married to somebody that didn't like her. She didn't argue any of that. She argued that an agreement that she was not a party to, was not mentioned in, and did not sign, somehow lets her off, negotiated by Alan Dershowitz and others on behalf of their client, Jeffrey Epstein, to let him continue effectively to have the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami effectively allow him to continue to prey on women. As Alan Dershowitz went after victims, that's been reporting. We just had Julie K. Brown on. You can go watch her interview, who broke the story for the Miami Herald on Legal AF, that Dershowitz hired private investigators to go after victims and get them to change their story. So this is the world of sexual abuse that Donald Trump operates in. What is it? It's almost like a disgusting tell by Donald Trump. What is it with him and convicted or indicted sex traffickers? He's considering a P. Diddy pardon. He's considering a Ghislaine Maxwell pardon. He's got Lawrence Taylor. Look, I was a big number 56 fan when I was a kid. He redefined the position of linebacker, but he's also a convicted young girl sex predator. Not once, but twice. And what is he doing at the White House? Talking about fitness. What is it with Donald Trump? He thinks if he normalizes sexual predator behavior and pedophilia, we won't act like it's a thing. It is a thing. And it matters. And so Ghislaine Maxwell can say anything she wants with her family, but she was convicted 9-0 beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of her peers in New York for being a convicted child sex trafficker. And so don't tell me that she's the fall guy because she's the only living participant of the conspiracy. That's just bad luck that Epstein died one way or the other while he was awaiting trial. That doesn't absolve the living participant of the conspiracy, especially as depraved as this one is. And so to distract from all of this, you get Donald Trump pushing all the buttons with his social media influencers from Laura Loomer to everybody else and handing out talking points. Run the talking point where Ghislaine Maxwell is a victim. Run the talking point where she may be bad, but other people are worse. Run the talking point that there may be Democrats in those files and those 100 names that Todd Blanche talked about. Run that Barack Obama may be guilty of seditious treason by Tulsi Gabbard, of all people, the crash test dummy that serves as our national director of intelligence. And is that dying down? Is the embers of that dying down? Okay, let's go after Jack Smith, the special prosecutor. Maybe he violated the Hatch Act in how he prosecuted Donald Trump. This is what happens. I know this sounds like a broken record, but this is what happens when you elect a criminal to the presidency. What did we think was going to happen? When you elect a judge sex abuser, misogynist, and convicted felon to be your president, this is what you're going to get. And if you don't like it, and we don't like it, then you work your butt off like we're all doing right now on both sides of the glass and microphone to get Democrats elected at the midterms, to return to some vision of normalcy, some version of normalcy, checks and balance, until the House is taken back by the Democrats. And they can, on one hand, work for the American people and make their lives better, and on the other hand, bring Donald Trump to justice and checks and balance his out-of-control rogue presidency. Our American democracy and experiment is at risk. And that's why you and I have such a high motor to do what we do dozens of hours a day, every day. Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. We do it twice a week on the Midas Touch Network. Free versions without commercials, in other words, on Legal AF Substack and on Patreon. And then we got the audio version. Some people don't know about. We need a little more love on the audio versions. Download, listen to, set a reminder for the audio versions. Leave 5-star reviews and comments on the video versions here on YouTube. We're top 20 of all YouTube podcasts. That's a testament to you. We still need to continue to grow this audience. If just 10% of the people that watch my work were to subscribe, we'd be in amazing shape. It would reflect, our subscriber base would reflect our audience. And that's where we want to end up. So with your help, we will. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popak Firm today at 1-877-POPAK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopakfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popak Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.